The Woman and the Golden Thread. The thread appeared on the morning Mira decided to give up. It was thin, almost invisible, catching the light only when she moved just right. Golden, not bright like treasure, but warm, muted, like sunlight filtered through dust. It lay across her palm as if it had always belonged there, resting against the lines of her hand with quiet certainty. Mira did not scream. She did not run. She stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, breath shallow, the room around her frozen in that fragile moment between disbelief and acceptance. Her apartment was small and tired, much like her, cracked paint on the walls, a window that never quite shut, the distant noise of a city that never asked how she was doing. She had woken that morning with a familiar weight pressing on her chest. Another day of unanswered emails. Another rejection. Another reminder that years of effort had led her nowhere she could recognize. She had sat on the edge of her bed, wondering how quietly a person could disappear without anyone noticing. And then the thread appeared. It extended from her palm, slipping gently through the air, passing beneath the door, disappearing somewhere beyond her sight. It did not pull. It did not tighten. It simply existed, patient and unafraid. Mira stood slowly, afraid sudden movement might break it. The thread remained, cool and solid against her skin. She followed it into the hallway, down the narrow stairs, and out into the street. Morning traffic flowed around her, people rushing past with coffee cups and phones, none of them noticing the golden line weaving between them like a secret meant only for her. The thread guided her, not forcefully, but insistently. It curved around corners she had never taken, down streets she had always avoided. Each step felt both strange and familiar, like remembering something she had never been taught. She thought about turning back more than once, about cutting the thread, about ignoring it entirely. But something deep inside her whispered that this was not an accident. The city changed as she walked. Glass buildings gave way to brick. Noise softened. The air grew heavier with memory. The thread led her to an old district near the river, where shops stood abandoned and time seemed to move more slowly. It stopped in front of a small tailor's shop. The sign above the door was faded, the letters barely legible. The windows were dusty but intact. Inside, spools of thread lined the walls, hundreds of them, every color imaginable. Gold, silver, crimson, blue so deep it felt like night. The bell above the door rang softly as Mira stepped inside. An old woman stood behind the counter, her back straight despite her age, her fingers moving quickly as she stitched fabric by hand. She did not look surprised to see Mira. "You found it," the woman said calmly. Mira's throat tightened. "You knew I would?" The woman smiled, eyes warm and sharp all at once. "Everyone does. Eventually. Most just don't follow." She gestured to the thread in Mira's hand. "That one's yours." "What does it mean?" Mira asked. "Is it fate? A warning? A mistake?" The woman set down her needle. "It's a record." "A record of what?" "Every choice you didn't make," the woman replied gently. "Every moment you turned away from yourself." Mira's breath caught. Images flickered in her mind. Opportunities abandoned out of fear, relationships left unfinished, dreams shrunk smaller and smaller until they felt embarrassing to name. "Why now?" she whispered. "Because you reached the edge," the woman said simply. "And the thread doesn't appear until it's needed." Mira looked at the spools lining the walls. "Do they all have one?" The woman nodded. "Every life has a thread. Most are tangled. Some are cut too early." A chill ran through Mira. "Can it be fixed?" The woman met her gaze. "It can be followed." Mira looked down at the golden line again. It glowed faintly, as if responding to the conversation. "Where does it lead?" The woman smiled, picking up her needle once more. "To every place you were afraid to go." Mira hesitated. Outside, the city waited. Inside, the thread pulsed softly against her skin. For the first time in a long while, she felt something unfamiliar stirring beneath the exhaustion. Hope. She stepped back toward the door, the thread tightening just enough to remind her it was still there. Still waiting. As she crossed the threshold, Mira understood something she hadn't before. The thread was not guiding her toward a destination. It was guiding her back to herself. The moment Mira stepped back onto the street, the air felt different. Not lighter, clearer, as if something invisible had finally been named. The golden thread tightened just slightly, enough to be felt but not enough to hurt, and began to guide her forward again. She followed. The path it chose was not direct. It never was. It led her past places she had avoided for years. The cafe where she once sat with a notebook full of ideas she was too afraid to share. The bus stop where she watched someone she loved leave without asking them to stay. The building where she had almost taken a job that scared her, then convinced herself she wasn't ready. Each place tugged at the thread gently, like a reminder rather than a command. Her chest tightened with every step. This wasn't a tour of regrets. It was something more precise, more intentional. The thread led her to the river. The water moved slowly, reflecting the sky in broken pieces. Mira stopped at the railing, gripping it as memories surfaced. Late nights walking alone, throwing thoughts she couldn't carry into the current, hoping the water would keep them. The thread dipped downward, brushing the surface of the river, glowing brighter for a brief moment. Mira understood then. It wasn't showing her what she had lost. It was showing her what was still waiting. The thread pulled again, firmer now. She followed it across a small footbridge and into a part of the city she had never explored. The buildings were shorter here, the streets narrower. Art spilled from open windows. Music drifted from unseen rooms. People laughed loudly, lived loudly, failed loudly. People tried. The thread stopped in front of a building with chipped paint and a handwritten sign taped to the door. Community studio. Open. Mira hesitated. The door was open, but stepping inside felt heavier than any locked gate. Her mind flooded with familiar excuses. Too late. Too inexperienced. Too afraid of being seen. The thread warmed against her palm. She stepped inside. The room buzzed with quiet chaos. Easels lined the walls. Canvases leaned against chairs. People of every age and background worked side by side, absorbed, imperfect, alive. No one looked up when she entered. No one judged. The thread loosened slightly, as if giving her space. A woman approached her, paint smudged on her cheek. "First time?" she asked. Mira nodded. "Grab whatever you like," the woman said. "There's no rules here. Just don't lie to yourself." Mira's hands shook as she picked up a brush. She stared at the blank canvas, panic rising in her throat. The emptiness felt accusatory, familiar. The thread stretched forward, resting against the canvas. She took a breath and made the first mark. It was wrong. Awkward, unbalanced. She kept going. Time lost its shape. She painted badly, then slightly better, then honestly. The thread glowed brighter with each movement, weaving itself into the strokes, not visible to anyone else but undeniably present. When she stepped back, the image startled her. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't finished. But it was hers. The thread pulled again when she left the studio, leading her onward over days, then weeks. It guided her through conversations she had avoided, applications she had never submitted, risks she had convinced herself were irresponsible. Some days the thread felt heavy. Some days it burned. Once it went slack entirely, and panic seized her, until she realized it hadn't disappeared. It was waiting for her to choose without being led. The final place it brought her to was quiet. An empty lot on the edge of the city, grass growing wild through cracked concrete. The thread stretched from her palm and anchored itself to nothing at all. Mira stood there, confused, frustrated. "This is it," she whispered. The thread shimmered, brighter than ever, then slowly began to unravel. Not breaking, unwinding. It slipped through her fingers, dissolving into light, wrapping briefly around her wrist like a goodbye. In its place, warmth remained. Familiar. Internal. Mira understood then what the old woman meant. The thread was never meant to last. It was meant to teach. She looked around the empty lot and saw possibility instead of absence. She smiled, not because everything was solved, but because she knew how to move forward now. The golden thread was gone, but the path was finally hers.